Welcome back to the channel. I want to do a quick video just showing a size comparison to the Wagoneer and the Grand Cherokee L. So as you guys know, this is a new model for the Jeep lineup. This is a new lineup for Jeep and for Wagoneer because they just brought this nameplate back. But if you take a look at the SUVs, believe it or not, they don't look that much different in size on the outside. Like, look at it. It's not a big difference. Now, if you look at it on a height perspective, the Wagoneer definitely does look a lot taller. But I'm going to change that right now. Hold on one second. Did that fix it? I don't know. It may or may not have. But I'm going to show you some of the specs online. That way you have a better look at them. But overall, I will say the biggest difference in the size is in the interior. So if you are kind of cross shopping these two SUVs, which is probably hard because of the price difference, but if you don't mind spending another 20 to 25 grand more, the Grand Cherokee L does feel smaller, and the Wagoneer probably would work better for some people, especially if you have a larger family. Now, as far as the side profile, you can kind of see that the Jeep Grand Cherokee L does kind of hide the Wagoneer. I mean, I have them pretty much identical in terms of like lining them up. You can kind of see that well, this one's actually a little bit further up actually. Maybe about maybe 2 or 3 inches. But they are almost the same size in terms of length. And I'll show that to you guys here in a second. But where the biggest size variance does happen is how wide the Wagoneer is over the Grand Cherokee L. And you can see that pretty much on the rear of the SUV. Look at those rear pillars on each one. You can see by the size of the glass on the Wagoneer versus the Grand Cherokee L2. So let's go ahead and start looking at some of the aspects of these SUVs. Like, we're going to start with the wheels and tires first. So on the Grand Cherokee L, I did find one with 20-inch wheels. So we're going to look at the tire size just to kind of give you a good idea. So this Wagoneer has a 275/55 tire, and it's going to be a Radial 20. And this Grand Cherokee L has a 265/50 20 tire. Now, obviously, if you were to look at the capacities of these tires, the Wagoneer is going to win that. But for the most part, this has a 51 PSI tire, so that's the max PSI you can put inside of this tire. This one's 44. Now let's take a look at interior space. I'm going to sit in the middle second row seat. Actually, I don't have a middle second row seat. I have a captain's chair set up in both SUVs. Well, actually, you know what? This one does have the bench. This is really rare. I'm at Tate here in Frederick. If you want a bench, they have a limited with a bench seat. So this is where I can clearly tell that this is a smaller SUV in comparison with the Wagoneer. I've never really cared for the Grand Cherokee for the size, especially when we had kids with car seats. I feel like the car seats in a Grand Cherokee WK, which is that model there, that's the older Grand Cherokee, I always felt that it was too small. This is a hair bigger than that in terms of the size. Now, I do have the seats somewhat back here in this SUV. Take a look at, actually, let me put the seat all the way back. All right, hold on. This seat's all the way back. This seat is all the way back. Now check out how much space I have. The seat's kind of back a little bit too, and I will do the same for the Wagoneer. But what I want you to really see is width difference of this too, because you will be able to see a difference when I hop over to the Wagoneer. So can you tell a difference in the width inside? I don't have to take out a tape measure to show it to you. This is clearly a larger interior. Now again, when you look at the overall size on the outside, you almost can't really tell that the Grand Cherokee L is a lot smaller than the Wagoneer. So you really want to do your research and see which one is better for you, because if you can afford the more expensive one, I would say jump to this one. If you want to save the money and still have 3 rows, that is a perfect SUV to have. Now, I just put this seat all the way back. You see that? I have more than enough room inside of here. And that's even having these little TVs too. Now this seat is all the way back too. And the next thing I want to show you is the 3rd row seat size difference. So here is the size difference out back here. This seat's all the way back. It's not reclined, but I have more than enough space. So now let's go ahead and check out the Grand Cherokee L. Alright, so not only is it a little bit more tighter back here, this seat sits a little bit lower too. So again, the size difference on the interior is where you're going to really feel it inside of the Wagoneer versus the Grand Cherokee L. As far as the driver's seat position goes, anyone can get inside of the Wagoneer or the Grand Cherokee L and get comfortable in this seat. You have a telescoping steering wheel. The seat does go back pretty far in both SUVs. In this one, I know you can adjust the pedals. I don't believe you can do so in the Grand Cherokee L. So this isn't a problem if you're trying to get comfortable. But when you look at the passenger side, look at how much space I have. This seat is all the way back. And even if I were to go up maybe 6 inches, look at that. It's still more than enough space to be comfortable. And that's why I think that if you can afford the more expensive Wagoneer, I would definitely jump to this one, because if you are a little bit taller and you do travel in the passenger seat, this will make you so much more comfortable versus the Grand Cherokee, which I'm going to show you right now. One thing I will say is you have a lot of length here. The seat's all the way back. I won't be biased here. This is definitely pretty roomy. Now you do lose a little bit of the width. I feel a little bit more like, I don't know, like the roof is a little bit shorter, right? And you don't have as much width as you did inside of the Wagoneer, but you do have a lot of length inside of the Grand Cherokee. Like I definitely can really like feel comfortable on long trips, but you do feel a little bit more claustrophobic when you compare the height of the ceiling inside of the Wagoneer. Now, here, hold on one second. I'm gonna put the seat back one more time. So if I go up 6 inches, that's probably 6 inches right there. You still have ample space inside of here. And like I said, you have a lot more length than I thought you did. But overall, the height of this is a little bit shorter, so, and it sits a little bit lower, so you don't have that more command view that you would have inside the Wagoneer. Now let's take a look at the trunks. This is where I think most people will see that the Wagoneer is a little bit more of a bargain. So again, look at your width, because this is pretty deep for a mid-size SUV. The Wagoneer is going to be considered a full-size SUV, so you would expect it to have decent cargo area. So let's take a look at the Wagoneer next. So as I mentioned, look at the amount of space you have in terms of the width. And this is slightly deeper. It's not a lot deeper. Let me get my tape measure to show you. All right, hold on. So this gives you a solid 25 inches. And this gives you a solid 51 inches side to side. Okay, this is the Wagoneer. Now let's go over to the Grand Cherokee L. So this is 20 and a half, and then this is 44 inches, okay? So, yeah, you can clearly tell that the Wagoneer has more capacity out back. And of course, you would expect that. So if you do need the space, if you would like to have more overall interior space, especially when you're doing long trips, I think that this is the better way to go.
Before I show you guys the powertrain, I wanted to just quickly show you the base price of a Wagoneer Series 1 full drive and a Grand Cherokee L Limited full drive. These are closely comparable. Now the Wagoneer is about $15,000 more at $15,245. And let's just take a look at some of the specs below. So as far as the engines go, you cannot get a V8 in the limited Grand Cherokee, so you would have to go up to an Overland. So if you want that V8, again, I strongly recommend you look at a Wagoneer 2 just to cross compare them. And as far as your fuel economy goes, this is your Wagoneer, and this is the Grand Cherokee L. Fuel tank size 26.5 on the Wagoneer versus 23 gallons on the Grand Cherokee L. And as far as your gross fuel weight rating goes, obviously your Grand Cherokee is going to be lighter than the Wagoneer. As far as the exterior dimensions go for the Wagoneer, it's going to win on the length, the width, and the height as you would expect. But it's definitely a big difference on the length. I guess you can't really tell in the video, but it's about 9.8 inches longer than the Grand Cherokee L. The width is the same story here. It's a pretty big difference. And as far as the exterior height goes, it's not a big difference. And keep in mind, if you do air suspension on the Wagoneer, you can lower it down too. Now wheelbase, not a big difference there too, but just take a look at everything else here. I won't go into detail, so just go through and pause if you like.
The standard engine for the Grand Cherokee is going to be a V6. It's going to be good for 290 horsepower, 257 pound-feet of torque. It's made to an 8-speed transmission, although it's more of like a car transmission. You can get an 8-cylinder in the Overland and up trims. However, if you would like the V8 to be standard, this Wagoneer comes standard with this 5.7 with e-torque. And it's going to be good for 392 horsepower, 404 pound-feet of torque. Made to an 8-speed transmission out of the pickup trucks. But in my opinion, I think that this is the better way to go. Again, if I were in the market, I think that I would buy the Wagoneer, even though the price point is a lot higher and you can't really truly compare these SUVs side by side. I think that for the extra money, you get the size, you get the V8 standard, you get just the overall curb appeal. Like you're going to see a bunch of the Grand Cherokee L's. You're not going to see a lot of Wagoneers and Grand Wagoneers. So I think that I would just spend the extra cash, have something that a lot of people aren't going to have on the roads, and it has a really nice timeless design to it too. So I hope this video was helpful. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys soon.